After knowing that robots really do exist in the world of SLF, Rust made a deal with Sunraku regarding a unique scenario that leads to the unique monster in one of the 7 colossi, Katarnate of the Abyss. In this video, we will see how Sunraku will prepare for this quest while facing foes along the way as he journeyed to Fifticia to meet up with Rust and Mordo for the information. Let's get started. Because of the information revealed by Rust, they transported themselves to the rooftop of a building. Sunraku felt relieved because he believed no one else was there except for them. Rust wondered if it was really necessary for them to change locations. Sunraku replied that there might be many other players besides them playing SLF. Moreover, he stated that information about unique monsters was extremely valuable, which Rust already knew. Mordo interjected, asking if they were ready to make a deal now that they were there. On their side, they had information about a unique scenario that led to the unique monster called Katarnate of the Abyss. Meanwhile, Sunraku had information about player-controlled robots available in SLF. Mordo asked what Sunraku thought about an even trade. Sunraku pondered for a moment, remembering what the professor had said, that no player had yet seen Katarnate of the Abyss. They only knew its name. He couldn't believe that Rust knew about a unique scenario leading to it. Rust then asked for Sunraku's opinion. Sunraku replied that he hadn't expected to hear words like unique monster in another game like that. Rust took offense at this, asking if Sunraku was implying that they weren't credible. Mordo added that they had played SLF, even more than others. Sunraku clarified that he wasn't doubting them. He explained that unique scenarios leading to monsters like that were extremely intricate in SLF. Until he could prove their information was useful and how he could use it, he didn't think he could share his own secret. Rust asked if he wanted them to go first, impressed by Sunraku's caution. He explained that the sci-fi equipment and robots weren't just his. He shared them with 2 others. So he needed to convince them first that this was a good idea, which was why he couldn't provide information immediately. One mistake with his companions, and he didn't know what they would do to him. Rust realized that whether they could convince them or not depended on the kind of information they had. Sunraku said she got it. Rust consented and signaled to Mordo. And so Mordo looked at his tablet and said that in Fifticia, there was a unique scenario available called Pierce the Disciple of the Abyss. Within it, there was an NPC named Self-Style Great Pirates Dude. This NPC asks players to pursue a ghost ship. Sunraku asked if Mordo had done it and what he knew about it. Mordo replied that he was about to get to that. He explained that they had accepted that scenario in Fifticia. When they did so, they were told about the ghost ship Crying Innsman. According to the self-styled pirate dude, the ghost ship, along with its inhabitants, would become a sacrifice to the master of the abyss. Sunraku confirmed whether they had completed that scenario yet. Mordo replied that they had only just accepted it. At that point, Rust had urged them to quit since they wouldn't find any robots there. Mordo then asked Sunraku if the information was useful. Sunraku responded that if that was all they could offer, it's nothing really decisive. Rust couldn't believe this. He clarified that scenarios directly connecting to unique monsters always had X attached to them. It seemed that the Pierce the Disciple of the Abyss scenario was linked to one of the X scenarios. In other words, the information about it was somewhat weak. Rust smiled and said that, on the other hand, if they could defeat that scenario and it led to an X-unique scenario, it would be extremely useful to him. Sunraku agreed, thinking that if he played his cards right, surely after the Vorpal Epic, he would have another X-unique scenario to play. So, Sunraku replied that they should keep the ball rolling. He would be happy to help with their ghost ship quest. Mordo was pleased to hear this. He asked where they should meet, and in his opinion, Fifticia would be the most efficient location. Rust then spoke to Sunraku to confirm if he was really going to quit Nephilim. Sunraku told Rust that she had been using the Crimson Twinuing all this time because she didn't want to switch until she was defeated. Maybe it's a win, loss, and tie, but she was defeated with that robot, and that was a fact. So, Sunraku said if Rust could make a new Nephilim for him, he would surely return for it. Both Mordo and Rust were surprised by this statement. Rust grinned and said, if that's the case, they should do it now. She pressed her interface, which startled Sunraku. Mordo just laughed because it seemed they were prepared for this. Sunraku couldn't believe it when Rust produced a new Nephilim, and she called it Ashen Antinomy. Sunraku was shocked by this and asked why Rust already had another one set up. Mordo explained that Rust couldn't wait, so she had prepared her next Nephilim in advance. Meanwhile, Super Tamao was annoyed because the three suddenly disappeared. He wondered where they had gone and searched for them. Another player mentioned that he knew they had moved somewhere in that direction. Super Tamao thought that Sunraku wouldn't just leave the game. Just then, someone behind him pointed out something, and they were surprised to see an unusual robot on the rooftop of a building. They had never seen it in the game before. Moreover, they were surprised to see it was facing Sunraku's robot. Because of this, Super Tamao realized that it might be Rust. He questioned whether this was likely Rust's new Nephilim in the game. Sunraku noted that the right side was designed for close-range combat and the left for long-range combat. He actually wanted to finish up with a couple of parting words, however. With such a large opponent in front of him, he felt he should conquer it. Rust and Mordo were pleased with this response. But Sunraku added that she already knew about his fiddler crab, putting him at a significant disadvantage. Rust challenged him, asking if he was willing to give up his seat to the players below. The people below were in a commotion, trying to contact other players so they wouldn't miss the event. They told their companions that Rust had a new craft, and they were on City Map B up above. Sunraku said it seemed everyone wanted to see Rust because she was piloting something other than her Crimson Twine Wing. Rust's challenge to duel appeared on Sunraku's interface, so Sunraku accepted it, saying they should finish it with a fireworks show. They were then transported to the battle zone and faced each other. However, Sunraku said he would return to defeat Rust soon, so Rust should wait for him. Then Sunraku logged out of the Nephilim Hollow game. Returning to the Ligonian Palace, Emul was hanging around, looking bored. She hadn't seen Sunraku for several days. She was startled when someone suddenly called her. It turned out to be her older brother, Sikru. He wanted to talk to her briefly because it seemed their father was missing. He asked her if she knew where he had gone. Emul replied that she didn't know anything either. When asked if he needed something from her, she said yes. Sikru explained that he had seen an impressive person who was recognized by the Golden Dragon King, Seagworm. Emul was shocked to hear this, as it seemed to be the first big hero since Sunraku. Sikru agreed and said this person was a powerhouse. He wanted to introduce her to their father. It turned out that this person was just behind them, and Sikru introduced her to his younger sister, Emul. The newcomer approached Emul and said she was delighted to meet her. She introduced herself as Akane Akitsu. Upon arriving at the Rabbituza or Ligonian Inn, Sunraku was shocked to discover that there was another human in the palace there. Emul confirmed this information. She said that the person had been recognized by Seagworm, the Golden Dragon King. She learned about this through her brother. Sunraku couldn't believe it because Seagworm was supposed to be a unique monster. He thought that the other player must have also gone through the extremely difficult process to trigger and accept the invitation from the Rabbituza unique scenario. He never imagined that anyone else besides himself had managed to do that. This meant that there was a chance for this person to reach the bonus unique scenario Vorpal Epic as well. He started to worry that if that happened, he would lose his monopoly on all of these things so easily. He couldn't accept this and felt it was really bad for him. Emul was surprised to see him suddenly revved up and was pleased that Sunraku seemed unchanged. However, he said this was to his advantage because no one else knew about it yet. If news about the invitation to Rabbituza spread on the internet, then the edge of their clan, Wolfgang, would suddenly disappear. SF Zoo was already keeping an eye on him, and if other people found out about the bonus unique scenario in Rabbituza, the Schwarzer Wolf and the library would surely show up, causing chaos. He considered whether he should talk to Pensilgan about it, but he decided against it, saying there wasn't enough time. He had promised Rust and Mordo that he would meet up with them in Fiftitia tomorrow at 8 in the morning. Rust had even warned him that if he was late, he wouldn't learn about Katarnit. Meanwhile, Mordo said they would be waiting for him. Sunraku couldn't simply not show up because of this situation. Sunraku was utterly confused by what had happened, and his mind was reeling from all the thoughts. While holding Emul's cheek, he asked for the name of the player or explorer she was referring to. She had difficulty answering at first, so Sunraku put her down. The name, she said, was Akane Akitsu, but Sunraka didn't recognize it. He realized it was truly impossible to know everyone, as the game's user base had reached 30 million. This was tens of thousands of times larger than Berserk Online Passion. Tracking down a single person there would be like searching for an ant's contact lens in the desert. However, there might still be time to act. He wanted to meet Akane Akitsu if possible. When he asked a mole if Akane was still in the palace, she replied that Akane was just resting until her father or their boss returned. So, Akane had logged out for now. Sunraku was then curious about Sikuru, but a mole said her brother wasn't showing himself to her either. Therefore, she didn't know where he was at the moment. Sunraku lamented these missed connections. He calmed himself down and said it was like random elements in a way. He wondered if random numbers he draws could help him prevent Akane Akitsu from spreading information about the scenario. But he was worried because the random number generator didn't seem to favor him. A mole was puzzled by his talk about random, and he explained it as the laws of the world. Anyway, he said he needed to go to Fifticia now. He opened his interface to look at the game map. First, he needed to go from the Road of Past Glories towards Levantar. From there, he would go to Baron Darkruin, and beyond that was Fifticia. It looked like quite a long journey, so Sunraku was concerned about whether he'd make it by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The mole was excited to leave with him. However, Sunraku apologized and said he couldn't take her along. The mole was shocked and asked what he meant. She complained that he always left her behind lately. Sunraku just laughed and explained that it was because he had an extremely important mission for her, which surprised her. Akane Akitsu would return there to meet her old friend Vash. So when that happened, Sunraku wanted a mole to report to him or try to keep Akane from leaving. He then showed her a carrot. While staring at the carrot, a mole said she didn't know why he wanted to do this, but asked if he wanted her to keep track of Akane and Rabituza. Sunraku confirmed that was correct. He asked if she was up for the task, and while thoroughly enjoying the carrot, she replied that she would do her best. Satisfied, Sunraku then asked her set up the gate to Adold for him. Just then, Virak arrived, surprised to see that Sunraku had returned. She wondered about all the ruckus. Sunraku greeted her, although mentioning he had little time. Virak replied that a lot had happened. Finally, she was finished. Sunraku pondered what she meant by this. Virak explained that she had used all the parts Sunraku had given her, both the crystal and golden scorpion bits. She used these to craft a re-legacy weapon, and this was her best work yet. Proudly, she showed it off, calling it Gilta-Brill. Sunraku couldn't believe this was the weapon he had requested, as it was so large. Virak responded that it was exactly as ordered. Sunraku had requested that instead of twin blades, he preferred to fight using gauntlets. That was correct, he said, but Sunraku hadn't expected it to be this size. He was curious if it would fit on his arm. Virak assured him that of course it would. She had paid attention to every detail, and using divinity tech, Sunraku could even command it with his voice. Before she could even finish explaining, Sunraku took it and stored it away, saying he'd test it out in combat later. Virak couldn't believe Sunraku was leaving already without hearing about the process. Because of this, Sunraku apologized, saying he was really in a hurry, but he promised to return and listen about the process later. He'd also give his impressions then. Until that time, Virak could just talk to a mole. However, she replied that she didn't care about those things either. Sunraku told her to just nod, compliment Virak, and that would be fine. He said she should just act like a bobblehead doll. This greatly annoyed Virak. She said Sunraku had no idea how high and mighty that weapon was, and so she called Sunraku a stupid, ungrateful bum. Fortunately, Sunraku had already exited through the gate when Virak tried to hit him, so he just told the mole to take care of things there. Sunraku arrived in Adold, and the question was how he would travel from there to Fifticia. He looked at his interface and noticed he was now at level 99. From there, he would be hitting the second half content. He became curious when he noticed Extend next to his level number. He wondered if this meant he had unlocked a new upper limit. Anyway, he decided to look into that later. He was sure to encounter new content from now on. Based on his experience, the difficulty level of solo play would likely skyrocket as well. And with the little time he had, he wished for some assistance. He thought about his clan mates Pensilgan and Katso, but he didn't want to involve them because they would surely interrogate him. So they were off the list. In terms of other acquaintances in the game, there were those he had met at the meeting. He remembered Siger 100 and Siger 0, so he wondered if they would help him. He figured there was no harm in trying, so he sent them a message. Siger 100 was puzzled when she noticed the bird messenger arriving. She was surprised to find a message for her and read it. Her companion asked who it was from, and she said it was from Animalia. It seemed she was interested in Lycagon. His clan member said she would surely start fangirling over Lycagon next. But if there was other info, they would certainly want to know about it too. Apparently, another one from their clan had also been contacted by her. Another bird approached, and it was for Siger 0 with a message, surprising them that she had received one too. Someone else remarked that it seemed Animalia was contacting all of her acquaintances. Siger 100 said they should ignore it, and that she would reply for all of them. Siger 0 then read the message she received, and Siger 100 asked what it was about. She replied that she needed to log out first. This puzzled them when she suddenly left. Her companions didn't know what was happening with her. Back in the real world, she was thinking about what she should do. As she removed her VR headset, she thought, "Finally, it's happening. The right time has come." Ray blushed and said, at last, Hizutome has sent her an invite. She was overjoyed and spun around on her bed in excitement. Meanwhile, Sunraku was surprised to notice her logging out of the game. He thought it was bad timing since he had no one else to turn to. While traveling, Sunraku examined his new weapon. However, he was shocked to discover that he couldn't equip Giltabril due to its required stats. He couldn't believe it needed 300 vitality, so he was annoyed that he couldn't use it yet. He was getting really frustrated with this pattern. As he read the description text, he regretted that it seemed full of cool features he couldn't access. Suddenly, Sunraku had an idea. Maybe he could equip items to boost his vitality. He checked the vitality of his Battlehorn helm and found it was 500. This made him extremely happy. He said could definitely equip it now. In the fight against Wezaemon or Weatherman, vitality wasn't a factor at all. He had only used that helm for its head parry ability. He was overjoyed to realize it had so much vitality. He was ecstatic that he had it made, and he felt he owed Virak a lot for that. As for strength and tech, he could just assign and used points. He could use the helm as an external transformation when breaking out Giltabril. Just then, a bird messenger arrived with a letter for Sunraku. It was Siger 0's reply. She apologized for the late response. First, she thanked him for the invite. She expressed her delight in the idea of working with him and asked him to let her know where they should meet. Sunraku, still thinking he was a boy, was surprised by how formal it was, but it seemed she would help him with this quest, and Sunraku greatly appreciated that. Sunraku said he would meet Siger 0 in Levantar. It was past the road of past glories, where he was now. He continued his journey, saying that if he wanted to reach Fifticia by 8 o'clock tomorrow to meet up with Rust and Mordo, he would need to meet Siger 0 first and continue the trek from there. He hurried, realizing it was now a race against time. It was time to defeat the area boss as quickly as possible. Since his goal was to catch up with Rust and Mordo in Fifticia, he had done some online research. He learned that in SLF, once you reach Thirdrima, the path forward splits into 3 routes. That was probably why there were 3 accessible areas when exiting Thirdrima. He chose the route passing through Forfolkshire. Most people chose this route because it was the simplest and most direct. One reason for this lies in the area boss of the Road of Past Glories there. He suddenly noticed something strange when he stepped on something unusual. He thought he had reached the place he was looking for. He was greeted by a large pile of rubble, and a timer started. As he approached and it moved, he knew this was the area boss of the Road of Past Glories. Sunraku had researched about this boss as well. Its body was made of junk and rubble, and its traits changed randomly. It continuously cycled through a series of effective attacks. Additionally, the rubble covering its body served as a tough and always-on armor coating. This made it difficult to damage. Sunraku recognized this as a gigantic boss fitting for the second half of the game. It was the overdressed golem, the area boss of that location. It was enormous compared to Sunraku. He had expected it to be big based on his research, but it was more like a mountain. Nevertheless, he knew it shouldn't be feared. Thanks to the game's numerous players, the overdressed golem's weaknesses were easily identifiable. Some people had said it was almost a pushover compared to the ravenous snake boss of the very first area. Because of this, more advanced players had made a sport of speedrunning this battle to achieve the fastest time. Sunraku prepared himself, noting that the best time so far was around 1 minute. He was determined to rewrite the record books. He planned to beat that 1 minute mark using his skills, Ignition, Nitro Gain, and Climax Booster. Without wasting any time, he attacked, causing parts of the golem's armor to fall off. His plan was to sneak behind the enemy and jump upwards. Then he would use the evolved version of the Vorpal Blade Art, like Mirror Moon, the Vorpal Secret Arts, Mirror of Fading. He continuously swung his blade while running. By now, 9 seconds had passed. The overdressed golem tried to hit him again, but Sunraku dodged. Instead of projecting his attack to its back as before, his plan was to leave a projection of himself glued to his spot. Essentially, this created a decoy that could distract for a few seconds. Normally, a tank would draw the enemy's attention, but now Sunraku could do this alone. The next step was evolve from Boat Leap. 3 halo rings were visible at his ankle, boosting his jump speed when he launched himself. He called this Shineo Possession. Unlike Boat Leaps that offer only a limited number of buff jumps, this could buff all his jumps for 30 seconds. He jumped along what he called a path of junk. He thought the name Road of Past Glories was indeed fitting. The golem suddenly attacked him again, making him realize his decoy was gone. He dodged but fell through the air. However, Sunraku was smiling because even without a platform, he could step on air. His next evolution was Skywalker to Fleetfoot. So, even without solid ground, he managed to jump again and used his blade to cling to the golem's junk armor. He then used the evolved version of Climbing Grate to nimbly reach its top. By now, the timer was at 29 seconds, and he finally reached the giant machine he was looking for. Many players had verified that destroying the 2 columns supporting its wheel was key. Once destroyed, the physics engine would pull the wheel down, straight onto the crown of the overdressed golem's head. This was said to be its weak point. The timer hit 33 seconds, and Sunraku thought that until now, he had never pulled off a destruction of this magnitude. But with his new weapon, he was sure he could destroy it easily. So, he prepared to use Giltabril to smash the enemy's head. Sunraku carried out his plan to bring down the overdressed golem. He put on his Battlehorn helm and planned to destroy the 2 support columns to make the extremely heavy equipment fall on the golem. If he wanted to beat the 1-minute speed record, he had no other choice but to do this. He approached the breakable connector and intended to use the Giltabril to bust it up. That way, he could send the wheel crashing down the area boss. By now, 33 seconds had passed. Sunraku always used his certain skill combo barehanded, and with only the bare minimum force. However, now that he had a new weapon, he was excited to see how much more intense it could be. He prepared himself and readied his weapon. From in-fight, he used the Hand of Fortune to strengthen the impact of his attack. He directly hit the connector to smash it. Due to his enhanced skill, a single strike resulted in a powerful explosion. Sunraku was pleased and called it a one-hit kill. Now that he had brought down 1 column, his next target was the second one on the other side. He prepared to move, however, he noticed something strange. His Shineo Possession, which gave him a buff to his jumps, was no longer working. Because of this, he couldn't reach the other side without that skill buff. 43 seconds had passed, and Sunraku was just running to avoid its attacks. He said that from below, it would take 20 seconds. So, he worried that he wouldn't be able to beat the 1-minute record then. He suddenly remembered what Belak had said, that she had carefully watched its creation and used divinity tech on it. He thought about the divinity tech and said that he had read the item description. So, he said he would go straight without a net, but he would need to try. He said fire up, and suddenly his Giltabril fired. He was surprised to see what it produced and realized that the weapon had a voice-activated command. The first thing it produced was a crystal bullet, and for the second, he stepped on the crystal produced by the weapon and ordered it to grow up. Apparently, when the crystal bullets detect a certain vibration wavelength, they suddenly grow larger. It was evident that as Sunraku stepped on it, the crystal bullet expanded enormously, enough for Sunraku to gain the momentum to jump to the other side. Legacy weapons are weapons made with divinity tech that are controlled by amplifying power in their structure. The crystal bullets use the vibration detection skill of crystal scorpions. Sunraku was overjoyed with his legacy weapon and said it wasn't just an attack force. He called it the greatest toy in the whole world. With the help of that crystal bullet, he managed to land on the other side in time. With only 13 seconds left, he couldn't wait for his hand of fortune to recharge. It was time, he said, to show the quick draw fist he had honed in BRP. He hit the connector and attacked it repeatedly. He didn't stop until he saw that part of it had cracked. Sunraku was shocked to see it gradually giving way. Because of this, he jumped backward to avoid the flying debris. At last, it was completely destroyed, and with both columns gone, that section collapsed. Sunraku noticed that he might be hit by it, and knowing he couldn't be crushed at that point, he jumped, saying it was time to land that slam dunk. As other players had said, the wheel went straight for the overdressed golem's head. Large pieces of its armor flew off, so Sunraku used his evolved Skywalker, Flit Foot, to jump in the air. He watched as the gigantic boss of that area gradually disappeared. As the enemy vanished, he found a place to land. Sunraku couldn't believe that its weight was really being crushed by its core, and that was it. It was surprising that he only needed to hit the wheel to kill the boss there. He called it crazy that this was the second half content of the game and termed it lame. Either way, he was still happy because it only took him 59 seconds to bring it down. He was thrilled because it was a brand new record for a solo run. It seemed that the crystal bullet of his Giltabril was extremely useful in many ways. Moreover, he still had many unused killer skills. So, he was excited about that. He said he would never let an area boss stop him in his conquest. Now, it was time to go to Levantar, the 11th city of the game. He hoped Siger Zero wouldn't give up waiting for him. Meanwhile, she had arrived at their meeting place in Levantar. Siger Zero caught the attention of other players in that area, as she was known as the attack holder. They wondered why she was alone and speculated that she might be waiting for someone there. When they returned after an hour, they were shocked to see her still standing in the same spot. They wondered who could be keeping her waiting. Siger Zero looked at them while they were talking about her. Her aura was different, so much so that two of them ran away nervously, as she was visibly irritated from waiting. But in truth, Siger Zero was restless. She wondered if Hizutome was already there yet, because she couldn't wait any longer. Levantar was shown as this massive city. Inside an armor shop, a man's surprised voice could be heard. It was Sunraku, shocked to realize that the excavated grind ash alone had 400 vitality. Apparently, that was enough to wield the Giltabril. He thought it funny that he would buy that belt just before the end game. However, the spiked horn helm he crafted early on gave even more vitality than that. Between that and the Giltabril, Belak's equipment surely meant business, he thought. So, he left the armor shop and noticed he had 15 minutes before meeting Siger Zero, so he decided to look around. Meanwhile, the two who had run away from Siger Zero earlier passed in front of him. Sunraku overheard their conversation. One said he was shocked because he had heard stories about Siger Zero. His companion replied that Siger Zero's sheer intimidation was crazy. They too thought he was a man and was visibly furious, and the other wasn't surprised because he had been kept waiting for an hour. Whoever it was, they said, was surely dead. Some people must have a death wish. Sunraku was surprised by what he heard and wondered if he had gotten the meetup time wrong. He hurried, saying there was no time for shopping because Siger Zero might crush him. At the meeting place, Siger Zero was surprised to see Sunraku arrive out of breath. Sunraku thought he had kept her waiting for a long time, and so he apologized profusely, but Siger Zero hadn't expected this. She said she had just arrived early because she had some free time. It wasn't a problem at all. Sunraku breathed a sigh of relief when he realized he wasn't at fault. He had panicked because he thought there might be an unwritten rule in Schwarzerwolf about meeting an hour in advance or something. He asked if it was okay to call her Siger Zero. As discussed, he requested to work with her to defeat the Baron Darkruin. He asked what reward she wanted for her time. She replied that she didn't need anything. She stuttered that anyway, they were friends, so he didn't need to worry about it. Sunraku couldn't believe it. In Saiger Zero's or Rei's mind, her mission that day was to give Hizutome a good impression because she wanted them to become close, and to do that, she would help him for free. Sunraku didn't seem pleased with this, saying free charity was the scariest thing of all. He wondered what Saiger Zero was thinking. When she asked if he was ready to start their quest, he said okay. The two headed straight to the barren dark ruin. Saiger Zero said it was like a road of past glories. It was meant to strongly evoke the divinity civilization. But unlike the road, which was the remains of a factory, this was a battlefield site. Sunraku commented that the battle there must have been intense, judging by its appearance. As the library clan had told Saiger Zero, the barren dark ruin was a battle of immense scale. The army was pushed back to the weapons factory. Sunraku then asked about the giant arm he saw there with something piercing it. Between that and the spine type on the road, he wondered how large the combatants there were. Saiger Zero replied that monsters of that size were still being searched for in SLF. That was the reason why the Library Lore clan was formed, to find out what happened in the past. Sunraku thought about the projected monsters they saw in the underground lab, which had marks like an omega symbol. He was curious if there was a connection between the spine and the giant arm there. Moreover, he couldn't help but think about what Setsuna said about their need to find the behemoth. There was so much data but from different points. So, there must be something there that would connect them all. The key was in the bonus unique scenarios, which led to unique monsters like the Vorpal Epic. Sunraku asked if this was about defeating unique monsters if they wanted to know something. He then retracted his question and said never mind. However, Saiger Zero asked him back. He had mentioned his goal to reach Fiftitia tomorrow, and so she asked if he had someone to meet there. He answered yes, and that he was meeting 2 players from another game there. Meanwhile, dragons could be seen in the area, observing them. Saiger Zero was curious if those 2 players were women, and Sunraku replied that one of them was. Suddenly, a dragon attacked from behind Saiger Zero, so Sunraku warned her of the incoming threat. She tightened her grip on her weapon and easily split the body of the attacker. Sunraku brought out his twin blades to help. While they were fighting, Saiger Zero asked if that woman was also Sunraku's friend. He replied that he hadn't met her in SLF yet, so she wasn't on his friend list. Saiger Zero, or Rei, thought about what he said and felt she still had a chance. Observing the fallen creature, Sunraku couldn't believe her strength and asked if she had applied a buff. But all Rei could think about was that she would close the gap between her and Hizutome while they conquered the barren dark ruin. Sunraku was overwhelmed by Saiger Zero, whom he still thought was male. He knew he had asked for her help, but part of him wanted to return to Rabbituza. Saiger Zero then asked if he was feeling unwell, which he denied. He suggested they should move forward, and she said she'd slash anything that stood in their way, which pleased Sunraku. The scene then shifted to another location, where Animalia appeared to be waiting for someone. Her meetup partner apologized for keeping her waiting, but she said it wasn't a problem. Animalia thanked her for taking the time to meet her. Now that she was there, she asked if it meant they were willing to bargain with her. It was revealed that she was talking to Arthur Pensilgan, who replied that of course she was. In the next scene, Saiger Zero charges forward and uses the Supreme Divine Slash to cut a Godzilla-like monster in half. Sunraku praises her for that move, saying that Saiger Zero made the monster look like paper. Saiger Zero explains that she was able to focus on the attack because Sunraku diverted the monster's attention. She adds that she's impressed with Sunraku because they've killed many monsters, but he still hasn't been hit even once. Sunraku replies that due to his mark, he would die if hit even once, and besides, the monsters there are beyond level 99. Saiger Zero then says she hopes Sunraku's mark can be removed so he can wear equipment, to which Sunraku responds that he's kind of wavering about it. Saiger Zero seems to ask why, and Sunraku answers that he's a glass cannon and can't receive buffs from other players, which is a hassle, but sometimes the mark helps him. Nevertheless, he wants to remove it from his legs, and Saiger 100 told him that an NPC named Aristella might be able to help with that. Saiger Zero mentions that Aristella is a saint in Tri-Divinity, the religion in SLF, and she's known as Aristella, Saint of Love. She's said to be a unique NPC in SLF, the only one capable of undoing all kinds of curses, and Saiger Zero guesses she might be able to remove Lycagon's mark too. However, Aristella is extremely popular and surrounded by NPCs in the church, as well as many high-level players, making her difficult to meet. While Saiger Zero is saying this, knights are shown fighting near the church, and Sunraka comments that Aristella's fanbase is loyal and seems to be a menace. He adds that this must be what Pencilgon meant when she compared Aristella to a pop idol, so he thinks they'll need a lot of money and connections to see Aristella. Then he asks if there's a special way if Saiger 100 is with him, and Saiger Zero answers yes. Because of this, Sunraku is overjoyed and says he wants to defeat the area bosses where they are and go to Fifticia, as they'll be late if they don't hurry. Saiger Zero has a favor, or rather, a proposal, and Sunraku asks what it is. Saiger Zero says it's a mouthful for Sunraku to call her Saiger Zero, and it's confusing to just say Saiger because of her sister Saiger 100. So if Sunraku wants, he can call her Rei or Zero in Japanese. Sunraku says he'll call her Rei then, and wonders if Saiger Zero is really her name, or if Saiger Rei is the correct pronunciation of her IGN. At that moment, Sunraka seems surprised because Rei suddenly starts trembling, and the truth is she's thrilled because Sunraku called her by her real name. Sunraku asks if Rei is okay, and she says yes, so Sunraku says that's good. Rei thinks she needs to help Hizutomi get closer to him, so she tells him there's a shortcut from where they are to the area boss, and it's a bit complicated. So if Sunraku is in a hurry, she'll guide him. Sunraku is pleased to hear this and says it's great, and Rei really knows a lot, which seems to make her happy. Rei says she's been playing SLF for a year now, so Sunraku asks if she's part of the old guard, but Rei says no. Besides that, she's delighted because she's getting closer to Sunraku. On the other hand, Sunraku wants to do the quest given to him by Visash, where he needs to find 3 Delta items, but he doesn't know how long it will take, so he'll look for them another time since he and Rei are still traveling. He adds that he thought Rei was scary at first, but she turned out to be friendly and helpful, so he's glad he invited her because he'll reach Fifticia without any problems. Night falls as the two travel, and Sunraku seems sleepy. Meanwhile, Rei appears to be trembling, and Sunraku calls out to her, saying it's getting late. Rei responds that they're almost there, but Sunraku points out that she said the same thing an hour ago. Then, we learn that Rei was just playing it cool when she mentioned the shortcut, and she doesn't really remember the shortcut well, so she's lost. At that moment, they see a wall, and Rei says she's seen it before, and Sunraku realizes that Rei doesn't know where she is. He wonders what he can do, since it's Saiger Zero after all, and if he angers her, she might chop him up. He also thinks that Rei is trying to help him, so he'll go along with what she's doing. He adds that SLF is really a beautiful game because even the night sky has many details, and he mentions this to Rei, who seems surprised. This is because saying the moon is beautiful is a poetic way of expressing love in Japanese. Rei stutters as she speaks and asks what Sunraku meant by what he said, but it seems Sunraku didn't get it. At that moment, the ground suddenly cracks, alerting Sunraku. The ground suddenly burst open in front of them, so they both quickly draw their weapons, and Rei asks if it's a curse. Then, someone tells them that she's seen their faces before. It's Animalia, and she tells the two that the road is closed from that point, so they should look for another route. Sunraku and Rei are surprised to see Animalia, who says it's an honor to be remembered by a top player. So she thanks Saiger Zero and says hello to Sunraku. Sunraku comments that Animalia's party seems armed to the teeth, so he asks what she's planning, hoping it's not player-killing banditry. Animalia turns the question back to him, because they're at the far edge of that area, far from the exit. Sunraku answers that he's conquering that field, but he seems shocked when he realizes that Animalia mentioned the far edge, and Rei is trembling beside him. Because of this, he mentally asks if Rei really has no sense of direction. Animalia says that if that's the case, it's not a double booking after all, which confuses Sunraku. Animalia adds that if they're just passing through, they should leave because they won't find the area boss there, and she's sure they've realized that they would have a hard time fighting her and her army. Sunraku says Animalia is acting intense, and asks if she's angry that he procrastinated in helping her enter Rabbituza, and if she could give him more time for that. However, Animalia says she's okay with it now, so Sunraku doesn't need to worry about it anymore. Sunraku says he doesn't get what Animalia is saying, who laughs while saying that the leader of Sunraku's group easily sang in exchange for paying his debt. She supposedly told him the conditions for triggering the unique scenario that Sunraku is hiding, and he can't believe Pensilgan did that. Animalia mentions that apparently, they just need to land 100 total critical hits on Lycagon the Nightslayer, and an envoy from Rabbituza will send you an invite. If they can do that, they can go to Rabbituza anytime, and because of that, their dream of Rabbituza heaven will come true. Sunraku now gets where the conversation is going, but there's something he doesn't understand. If Animalia knows this, why isn't she hunting Lycagon? And why is she guarding the far edge of that map, willing to fight for it? The mood of the scene seems to change, alarming Sunraku, and Animalia explains that her clan is the SF Zoo, and they undertake every measure to research all the details of the lives and behavior patterns of animals and monsters that grab their attention. When it comes to dedication, they're even more devoted to that goal than the library clan. Then, suddenly, a black substance surrounds the sky, and Animalia says that even if it's a unique monster called Lycagon the Nightslayer, it won't be able to stop them. Lycagon has indeed appeared, and Sunraku says he always thought the reason he lost to Lycagon was because he was new to SLF and his level was still low, but he's just kidding himself. Lycagon's deathly aura, he says, exudes from every pore of its being, and there's nothing more direct than that. Lycagon prepared to attack, and Animalia called the members of SF Zoo, telling them to attack using the anti-dragon approach. Ray asked Sunraku what they should do, but Animalia told them not to interfere and just watch. She said they should observe how serious SF Zoo is about these things. Sunraku agreed that SF Zoo is indeed serious, as they've researched its behavior extensively, enough to predict where it will appear. He said they're not just crazy animal lovers, so they should watch what SF Zoo will do. Then, a member used the enhanced durability skill, and he could see they were buffed out to the max, so it was time to go all out. He wasn't the only one who did this, but also other players with shields like him. Sunraku was surprised by what they did, and he couldn't believe that the Knights of SF Zoo were using 2 shields, so he doubted they could move. Ray said they might be using skill assists to gain some mobility. 5 tanks, 10 debuffers, including Animalia. So Ray said they have no offense, and that setup is extreme. On the other hand, a shield user challenged Lycagon, so it targeted him, and he was thrown into a broken pillar. He said the damage was incredibly strong even though they had already used tons of defense buffs, and it was shown that his HP dropped to 71 from 560. Another shield user said they couldn't let Lycagon attack their comrade again, so they would cover him. He added that the attack was so fast that even if they weren't using that gear, they couldn't dodge, and according to another shield user, it's okay as long as they don't get insta-killed, so they shouldn't break formation. Sunraku said it's beautiful to see that combination because the metal turtles are talented. Besides attracting Lycagon's attacks, their shifting around will limit Lycagon's movement. So in that way, the debuffers can land more strikes. While Sunraku was saying this, another shield user was attacked by Lycagon, so the mage users seemed to get nervous. Then, Animalia ordered the first team to attack, so they used the Atlas Bind skill, which fired triangle-shaped objects. When it hit Lycagon, its legs were bound, so it couldn't move, and the first team was overjoyed. Lycagon bit that thing, and it easily cut it, so the mages panicked, but Animalia told them to stand firm. She told the mages to continue with the Atlas Band, which they did, so they caught Lycagon, and the mages applied magic buffs, so Lycagon seemed to be in pain. Sunraku was impressed by what they were doing, and Ray said it was a standard SF Zoo strategy capable of binding dragons. They have the best tanks in SLF, who take the attacks, while the debuffers hold down the enemy, and to top it off, there's Animalia, who said she would use a unique curse spell that can only be triggered when she equips the unique weapon called Underworld Keystaff. She began using the spell, and we can see 2 glowing circles appearing beside Lycagon, and the hands of Tartarus came out, binding Lycagon down. Animalia said that against all living things, it inflicts an immobility ailment for 1 minute, and because of that, their operation to capture Lycagon the Nightslayer was a success, so they started celebrating. Some debuffers said that moment was so epic, they needed to screenshot it, but Animalia said there was no time for that. Their target was at least 100 critical hits to trigger the unique scenario. Ray said that in this situation, it looks like SF Zoo will satisfy the conditions of the Rabbituza unique scenario. However, Sunraku said he wasn't sure about that, which seemed to surprise Ray. He explained that the condition Animalia got from Pensilgan only sets a certain flag, and the chances need to be extremely good with weapon and level factors. Besides that, he's not yet sure about Vash's talk regarding Vorpal's soul, but he doubts he'd applaud SF Zoo for ganging up on Lycagon. He added that Pensilgan didn't lie to SF Zoo, but he scammed them for a very incomplete story, so it's awful. Besides that, what he told Pensilgan was uncertain at best, but he didn't expect SF Zoo would bind Lycagon like this. He also said that Lycagon seems unconcerned about what SF Zoo did, so something's not right and Lycagon is hiding something. At that moment, the moon appeared as a full moon, compared to its waxing crescent form before it was covered by clouds. Animalia told her clanmates to feel the Lycagon's fuzz, but something happened to its body, with black spikes emerging, which alarmed Sunraku, and Ray asked what was wrong. Sunraku said it turns out he was mistaken, because he thought Lycagon was called Nightslayer since it attacks at night, literally, but that wasn't the case. Besides that, he saw something in the sky, which Animalia also noticed. It turns out that the darkness itself attacks the night. The Lycagon the Nightslayer is literally the advancing darkness of the night. Then, an explosion occurred in front of Sunraku and Ray, and it seemed something happened to the Lycagon. The members of the SF Zoo clan were shocked, and one seemed worried, and said something about their leader's magic. At that moment, a second Lycagon appeared, with Animalia in its mouth, causing disbelief among the SF Zoo clan members due to the second Lycagon. Ray asked Sunraku what it was, and Sunraku replied that it was a second Lycagon, or a new incarnation. On the other hand, the SF Zoo clan members were becoming worried about Animalia because she was continuously taking damage. Animalia called out to the Lycagon, and she said that animals are cute and heroic, and their difference from humans is what makes them so precious. While Animalia was saying this, her clanmates continued to worry and were planning to rescue her. Animalia also said that in real life, she's allergic to animals. So in a world as realistic as Shangri-La, depicting every detail, down to the fleas and the monster's fur, she really felt like it was Shangri-La, a pleasant place where one can get anything they want, according to Google. Animalia added that she adores everything about the animals there, and she loved and interacted with them more than anyone else. Because of this, she understands why Lycagon the Nightslayer is different from the others. Animalia tried to stop the Lycagon from eating her, but it continued, shocking her clanmates. Then, the Lycagon disappeared, and a mage asked if it was gone, but a shield user replied that it might just be a skill, so they should stay on guard. At that moment, a drip of darkness appeared behind the SF Zoo clan, and while the clan members were discussing what to do, Lycagon reappeared from behind them and attacked a mage. Sunraku was surprised by this event, and Ray said it seemed the unique monster teleported, vanishing again in front of the SF Zoo members. Sunraku said that the Lycagon wasn't just teleporting, but traveling through the darkness. Sunraku could hear the Lycagon's movements, and he said that wasn't all it was doing, because it was truly one with the dark. A completely invisible attack carried out by its incarnations as they melt into the darkness. As Sunraku was explaining this, the members of the SF Zoo clan were being consumed by darkness one by one. Because of this, Sunraku realized that this was the trick of Lycagon the Nightslayer. At that moment, it seemed that light hit the Lycagon, causing its paws to stiffen and crumble, but it just shook itself, and a new Lycagon emerged from the darkness. We can also see that many members of the SF Zoo clan have died, and one is begging for help because they can't stay there, but the Lycagon just stepped on her. Ray said the SF clan was easily defeated, so she asked what they would do now, and Sunraku replied that thanks to the SF Zoo clan, they now have an official encounter with the Lycagon, and they have witnessed its unpredictable attacks. In other words, they have a perfect chance to teach the naughty pup some manners. Ray asked if they were going to fight the Lycagon now, but according to Sunraku, if they want to defeat the Lycagon, they've got one big problem on their hands. The Lycagon is approaching the two, and they seem to be getting nervous. Sunraku said that fighting the Lycagon the Nightslayer is a golden opportunity, but again mentions that there's a big problem, because if they both fight, it might unlock the resulting bonus unique scenario for Ray. Ray asked what the issue was, and Sunraku thought that information was a powerful weapon at that moment, and Ray's clan craved intel about the Lycagon more than anything, so it would affect the power balance of their clan alliance. He said that the advanced players of that game are truly underestimated in times of crisis, just like the SF Zoo clan with their extremely unbalanced party structure, but they still succeeded in binding down the Lycagon. He added that if Schwarz-Wolf gets the information they need, they could create a more traditional raid party, and there's no guarantee they won't kill the Lycagon using that. Then they would have a monopoly on the resulting bonus unique scenario, and they would be the first to defeat the Lycagon the Nightslayer, which is the last thing he wants. Besides, Ray has already seen what the Lycagon can do, so it's a risk if Schwarz-Wolf gets even more information. Because of this, Sunraku thought that the best way for this to work out for him is if they both get wiped out by the Lycagon, even if he has to drag Ray down with him. While Sunraku was saying this, it was shown that his feet were bound by chains, symbolizing something holding him back from doing what he wants. Nevertheless, he wondered if it was okay to purposely die after encountering a unique monster, and he had invited Ray, so it would be awful to do that. He said it would be bad manners, and it would put his reputation as a gamer into question if he did that. Even though he doesn't care about that, it would be lame, and because of this, he's having a very hard time deciding what to do. He needs to reach Fifticia by tomorrow morning, so if he dies and has to travel that road again, there won't be time to think about what to do. Sunraku already knows which path would be best for him, and at that moment, Ray noticed something was wrong. Ray said that Hizutomi was different from normal, and we are taken to a flashback when it was raining. Ray recounted that it was raining when she first saw Hizutomi, and he was running with a happy face, even though he didn't have an umbrella. Hizutomi's smile was like a sunbeam that caught her attention, and she wanted to know why Hizutomi was so happy, so she followed him. He went to a gaming store and was excited about a game, as if he had discovered a precious jewel or treasure. She added that she was so attracted to that, feeling like she wanted to play with Hizutomi sometime. But at that moment, the jewel was in front of Hizutomi, but he wasn't trying to grab it. It was as if something was blocking Sunraku from moving forward. So Ray asked if there was anything she could do to help. Then, Ray called out to Sunraku and said that honestly, she doesn't have a fixation on the Lycagon, unlike her clanmates, so she wants to fight it another time, but in an in-game monster way. Besides, sometimes she just says, "So what if she beats me?" But when she loses her will like that, she makes a little resolution in her mind, but deep down, she thinks about Hizutomi. If she will fight the Lycagon, she wants to enjoy it with everything she has. She said it's not important whether they win or lose because at that moment, they should just enjoy the game with every fiber of their being. Sunraku heard what Ray said, so he applied it to himself, and he was freed from the chains holding him back. Then he apologized to Ray and asked if he looked stupid just now, and Ray was trembling nervously, not knowing what to say. Sunraku couldn't believe that he was about to kill himself because of clans and monopolies, and he said that this wasn't the time to think like a coward, and questioned what's his purpose in playing the game in the first place. The Lycagon slammed its paws on the ground as a way to prepare to charge, causing the ground to shake, and Sunraku said that he was having fun on that moment. So whatever happens next doesn't matter. He said it's okay to consider the future, but why should he make the present boring because of it? So he thanked Ray for opening his eyes, then took out his twin daggers, and he said they should do this with all they've got. The two charged forward, and Sunraku said who gives a crap if he gives information to Schwarz-Wolf about the Lycagon, because if they defeat it, everything will be okay. At that moment, the Lycagon jumped to slash the two with its paws, and Sunraku said the Lycagon should prepare because he had changed since their last battle. So he blocked its attack, and according to him, he'll show it the power of a maxed out level 99 player. We then move to another place, where someone is running and Imol is talking to someone, telling them to just wait, because she was hoping they'll wait at the Rabatuza Palace. It was Akane, and she replied that it would be faster to just run, and Sikru told Imol to give it up since it is simply the girl's nature. Then, he asked Akane if she was sure she knew who she was looking for, and Akane replied that she wasn't sure, but based on what Imol said, it might be the same Sunraku she knows. Let's return to the battle, where Sunraku once again deflected the Lycagon's attack. He was overjoyed about this and said that memories of their first fight were coming back. On the other hand, Ray thought it was difficult to deflect the Lycagon's attacks using light weapons, so she said she would join Sunraku. She tried to use Supreme Divine Slash on the Lycagon, but it didn't work due to the Lycagon's extreme toughness. The Lycagon kicked Rei very far, and she hit a ruined building. Because of this, Rei realized that a normal fighting approach wouldn't work against this unique monster. Sunraku called out to Rei, telling her that he would distract the Lycagon, and once Rei had healed, she should look for an opportunity to launch a stronger attack. Then, Lycagon used a skill where another Lycagon appeared behind Sunraku, and Rei said it was a clone attack. The Lycagon clone tried to step on Sunraku, but he dodged it. He said everything was fine because he had seen the Lycagon use this many times during the SF Zoo raid. He explained that the Lycagon could send copies of itself from shadow to shadow, which was dangerous, but it seemed the clones could only do simple things. As Rei charged forward, she asked what Sunraku meant by simple, and Sunraku answered that the clones could only perform super simple tactics, like frontal stampedes and stuff. He added that he hadn't seen a clone do more complex things like pursuing a target that's dodging attacks. If you watch the position of the shadows from the buildings and move based on that, it's not impossible to continuously avoid the Lycagon and its clone, which is what Sunraku was doing. He also said that they needed to watch out for the skill the Lycagon used to eat Animalia. He explained that when the moon is hidden behind clouds, the whole area is treated as dark, making it hard to know where the Lycagon will attack. The clones can melt into the darkness where they're difficult to see, making them almost impossible to avoid. For now, he said, they need to attack the Lycagon bit by bit while the moon is still visible. So he ordered Rei to watch how the clouds move and continue attacking. According to Rei, not even someone as talented as Sunraku could attack while being attacked by the Lycagon. So she needed to step up and deal as much damage as she could. Rei jumped to attack and used Apocalypse on the Lycagon's leg, which seemed to cause great pain to the unique monster, making it back up a little. Sunraku was impressed by Rei's critical hit, and the Lycagon turned to face Rei, who told Sunraku that she would occupy the unique monster for now. Sunraku said that next time, he would use Giltabril to unleash something very big, and while he was saying this, the Lycagon targeted Rei. Rei said this was her fourth fight against the Lycagon, so she should be able to keep its attention. At that moment, Rei was suddenly surprised because something appeared behind Sunraku, who also noticed a Lycagon clone appearing behind him. The clone attacked and Sunraku said that it was close, but he's fine since he had dodged it once already. But Rei suddenly called out to him, shouting that Sunraku had assumed the wrong Lycagon and pointed out that the one who attacked him was the real one. She was angry and used its paw again to slash at Sunraku, who realized it was indeed the real Lycagon. It struck Sunraku towards a building, causing Rei to worry because of the strong impact of that attack. However, the Lycagon seemed surprised because something emerged from the dust, and it was Sunraku. Rei praised Sunraku for his escape, and Sunraku said he managed to do it, and if it weren't for Inventoria, he would have been dead. The Lycagon faced the two again, and Rei said that the real Lycagon could also traverse shadows. Sunraku replied that it wasn't a big deal in itself, and the real issue was that she was hiding it from them. He added that he thought the real Lycagon couldn't pass through shadows because she had fought all this time without doing it to make them think that was the case. Rei couldn't believe what she learned, and according to Sunraku, looking back, the way Lycagon appears out of nowhere suggests that it's her, exiting a shadow. He said that since the SF Zoo battle, Lycagon was out to fool them. He added that that may already have been the case even in his first encounter with her. And he added that the Lycagon understands what he said before, and now it was playing with him. Rei asked if the Lycagon could understand human speech, and Sunraku said yes, since there's no explaining her reaction otherwise. Besides that, he knew the Lycagon was a unique monster, but he wondered what kind of AI they had planted in it, saying the game takes everything overboard. Lycagon the Nightslayer is truly one of the 7 colossi, and not just some ordinary dog monster with inflated stats. The Lycagon seemed to grin and snarl in response to Sunraku, as if saying it understood what he said. The Lycagon charged at the two again, and Sunraku asked how they could fight someone as sly as the Lycagon. The answer was their own skills, so Sunraku used Vorpal's secret arts, Mirror of Fading, allowing him to avoid Lycagon's attack by creating his own clone. Rei asked what Sunraku had done, and he replied that it was like a decoy, but it disappears quickly. He added that even the smartest AI wouldn't ignore skills, as it was still attacking Sunraku's decoy. Then, he told Rei that they should create a strategy while they still could. He also said that they didn't have any effective attacks at that moment, but Rei said she thinks she has a clincher they could use. Sunraku wondered what it was, and Rei explained that it was an attack skill that set the SLF record for the most instant force, which was the reason she got the moniker Attack Master. If she could hit the Lycagon with it, she thought it would really be affected. Sunraku couldn't believe that Attack Master had an origin story, so he was very impressed. Rei said that triggering her clincher was difficult, and she hadn't used it successfully against Lycagon yet, but now that Sunraku was with her, it should not be impossible to do. According to Sunraku, he thought no one would refuse that invitation, so they should do it and risk their victory on making that clincher work. At that moment, Sunraku's decoy disappeared, and someone said to return to the battle. It was Sunraku, and he was wearing the Gilta Brill, so he used the Airjetlam skill on the Lycagon's face. Airjetlam is a skill that has bonus damage for critical hits based on the luck stat, a combination of Hand of Fortune and Shock Fist. The Lycagon easily recovered from Sunraku's attack, who couldn't believe that the Lycagon wasn't fazed by an Airjetlam attack. The Lycagon attacked repeatedly after that, and Sunraku seemed to be taunting it, saying its attacks wouldn't hit. Let's go back to Rei, who was explaining to Sunraku that to trigger her clincher, she needed to land the skills Apocalypse and Catastrophe 5 times each on the Lycagon. Sunraku asked if the skill Rei had just used was Apocalypse, and Rei said yes, and it was part of Satinel the Evil Emperor, a unique skill available to her at that time. Rei transformed into her reverse of Satinel form, and she said that the second skill was a unique skill she could only use when she was in the Satan Emperor of Evil mode, where her armor was black. Then she used Catastrophe on the Lycagon, which angered it and made it look in her direction. Sunraku saw that it was Catastrophe, and he realized that the user is open for a moment before deploying it, and it attracts the enemy's attention. So he took Lycagon's attention to keep it away from Rei. He said he needed to do it 4 more times, and it was annoying, so it should be rewarding, and it's all up to Rei. He said he would distract the Lycagon, and at that moment, Rei noticed that clouds were covering the moon, so she warned Sunraku about it. According to Sunraku, they needed to know how Lycagon attacks when the moon is covered because if not, they wouldn't be able to reach Rei's clincher, so he told himself to focus. If he could figure out where and when the Lycagon would attack, he could avoid it without seeing her. Every time it summons a clone, there's a faint sound to be heard, and he needed to listen for it. So he would concentrate all his senses on his ears to find it. However, he wondered how he could do that while fighting the real Lycagon. At that moment, a Lycagon clone appeared, and Sunraku noticed it before it could attack him. Rei worried for Sunraku because of that attack, and we can see that Sunraku had entered Inventoria to avoid the Lycagon's attack, and he said that was all he could rely on. He wondered if that dog is distracting him by destroying the rubble around her, by destroying the rubble around them. Besides that, Inventoria consumed a lot of MP, and it was shown that Sunraku's MP was 0 because of it. He added that when they fought Wazaemon, they were more than prepared, but the fight with Lycagon was sudden, so they couldn't prepare much, and he only had a few healing items left. As long as they didn't have a firm solution for the invisible clones, they are bound to blow it sooner or later. Even the weather was against them, and he wondered if he needed a giant fan or something. At that moment, he saw the non-standard ether reactor, so he thought it might work. Let's return to the battle, where Rei was struggling against Lycagon. She said her durability should boost when she's in Satan mode, but at that point, her healing items weren't enough. Then, Sunraku apologized for taking so long to return, and he immediately used Vorpal's secret arts, Mirror of Fading, which distracted Lycagon. Rei said that Sunraku was okay after all, and she asked what was with his headgear. It was shown that Sunraku's headgear had changed, and he said it was the non-standard specialized armor called the Adebane, but it was just the headgear of the armor. He told Rei it was time to rally back, and Rei didn't understand what Sunraku was saying about non-standard this and that. Sunraku explained that he couldn't wear the suits in Inventoria, but the headgear wasn't included in that, and when he wears it and uses the non-standard ether reactor, it's enough to revive Wazaemon's relics. Then, he brought out the non-standard tactical bird, called Suzaku. Rei asked what the non-standard tactical bird Suzaku was, and Sunraku heard mechanical sounds, realizing that the helm was starting. He also said that the ether reactor, which Virak had fixed for him, functions as an energy core for the tactical beasts. It provides energy to the powered suit where it's placed, releasing all its features. He said he wasn't sure if it would work with just the headgear, but everything seemed fine. We also learned that his new headgear has a few functions, and at that moment, Suzaku became ready. The first function of the headgear is that it can control Suzaku, which Sunraku is currently using, and he's happy that he can now operate robots in SLF. Suzaku was about to explain its armaments, but Sunraku told her to save that for later because he had already seen them, and he would tell Suzaku what he wanted her to do first. On the other hand, Rei asked what Suzaku was, and if it was a type of robot bird, because she had been playing SLF for over a year but had never seen it before. At that moment, Lycagon was still attacking Sunraku's decoy, and Rei regretted that she had missed a chance to attack. She needed to land her Apocalypse and Catastrophe skills, but she had only managed to do it once, and she was being too careful. She charged forward, thinking that she couldn't waste Sunraku's hard work, so she needed to satisfy all the conditions and catch up to Sunraku. She used Catastrophe again, bringing the total tally of that skill's hits to 2. Let's go back to Sunraku, who had finished giving orders to Suzaku, so he asked if she understood what he said. Suzaku was about to say something, and Sunraku asked what it was, and Suzaku replied that she got it. Suzaku opened her wings and flew, so Sunraku said there was a bit of a delay. He added that it wasn't the flashiest of jobs, but only Suzaku could do it, and he was relying on that tactical bird. In Rei's battle, she used the Apocalypse skill for the second time, and she said that her special skills hits were now even at 2. At that moment, Lycagon focused its attention on Rei, and Sunraku's decoy had also disappeared, so he told Rei about it, saying he would take Lycagon's attention first, so Rei should step back for now. Rei replied that she would distance herself until her recast time expired, and it looked like Lycagon was planning something. Sunraku faced it, asking what was up, and said it should come at him. Then, he shot at Lycagon using Giltabril, but it dodged, so the bullet only grazed it and hit a pillar behind Lycagon. Lycagon retaliated with several paw attacks, and Sunraku said it was time for a comeback. Sunraku punched something with his Giltabril, and it was the pillar that the bullet had hit, and it seemed like he was telling the pillar to use vibration to make it bigger. Suddenly, the bullet Sunraku had used earlier grew larger and hit Lycagon in the face. Sunraku said that Lycagon's head was more susceptible to damage compared to other parts of its body. Rei was impressed with Sunraku, and since the battle began, Sunraku had been getting better at tracking Lycagon's movements. The clouds covered the moon again, alarming Sunraku, and we can see that the dark spikes Lycagon uses have appeared again. Rei warned Sunraku that he would soon see invisible clones, and Sunraku explained that the invisible clones were surprise attacks from the darkness when the moonlight disappeared, but he said he could do something about it. He told Suzaku it was her time, and she flew towards the clouds, using the maximum output of her boosters and performing circling maneuvers in the sky. Because of this, she blew away the clouds, impressing Rei as the clouds gave way. Sunraku also saw the invisible clone, so he avoided it and charged at another Lycagon. He said that if he could see it, it wasn't any different from other clones, so it was too bad for Lycagon. He added that it couldn't use its invisible clones anymore, and he used Airgetlam again on the real Lycagon, which seemed annoyed. Then, Sunraku called out to Rei, who said that honestly, she hadn't thought she had a chance, because there was no way they could match Lycagon, but now that she was with Hizutome, she felt like they couldn't lose to anyone, no matter how strong, and she used the Apocalypse skill. That skill hit Lycagon hard, but it grinned as if hiding something. Lycagon suddenly kicked Rei, causing her to fly back with great force and hit the surrounding rubble, which made Sunraku worry about her. According to Rei, she had seen Sunraku perform the maneuver several times, but she couldn't do it herself. Sunraku told Rei to heal up, thinking that she might be okay despite being thrown so far. He added that if he continued attacking Lycagon, it would target him, so he attacked Lycagon anyway. Lycagon prepared to retaliate, but instead of going for Sunraku, it charged at Rei, surprising Sunraku. He couldn't believe that Lycagon ignored him and attacked Rei, but Rei managed to dodge, saying she had no space to heal. She said her sword felt heavier, and her body and armor were also heavy. She thought that if she is defeated there, they would lose their offense against Lycagon, and at that moment, Sunraku called out to her. Rei refused to die, saying that if Sunraku were in her situation, he wouldn't give up either. She added that she was one of the top players, even called the Attack Master, so if she complained about this, it would be disrespectful to Hizutome. Then, suddenly a Lycagon clone appeared, startling Rei, and she thought that until the end, she was dragging down Sunraku. Lycagon devoured Rei, which worried Sunraku more, who was shocked that Rei had died. But suddenly Rei turned into a wooden log. Lycagon seemed unable to believe what happened, and we can see that something was written on that log. Sunraku was also surprised by what happened, and someone said it was Hagakushi's secret arts. It was Akane, who said that secret art was called Utsasimi, and beside her was Rei, who was still alive. She explained that when it comes to ninja transform skills, the log is the standard motif, and because Rei didn't move, she was able to do it at the right time. Rei couldn't process what happened, so she had questions, like whether she was saved, and who saved her. Besides that, she also said hello to Akane. Lycagon was dumbfounded by what happened, still seemingly unable to process it. Then, Akane asked Rei if she was Sunraku, and Rei replied that her name was Saiger Zero. Because of this, Akane realized that Sunraku was the other player there, and she said she had heard that he wore a bird head, but it looked like he was wearing solid armor. Rei wondered if Sunraku knew Akane, and Sunraku asked who that player was, referring to Akane. Then, a mole ambushed Sunraku from behind, making him think it was a monster, but it was just a mole, who was overjoyed to see Sunraku, saying he was so far away. Sunraku asked what a mole was doing there, saying he had told her to stay at the palace of Rabatuza, and a mole replied that a lot had happened to them. Sikru said they had finally caught up with Sunraku, who was surprised to see him. Sunraku asked a mole if he should assume that Sikru was related to her, and a mole replied that he was her brother, Sikru, and that she had told Sunraku about her brother before. Sikru said that Akane Akitsu wanted to meet Sunraku, so he was accompanying her, and Sunraku thought that the name Akane Akitsu was familiar. He remembered that it was the name Emol had told him when he asked who the new player in Rabatuza was, so he realized that she was the player who also had access to the Rabatuza unique scenario. On the other hand, Lycagon crushed the log and charged at Akane and Rei, but the two managed to dodge. Akane commented on how big a dog Lycagon was, and Rei thanked her, so she said it was no problem. Then, Rei asked what Akane's relationship with Sunraku was, asking this while Lycagon was attacking them. Akane replied that Sunraku was an older player she respected, which seemed to surprise Rei, as they continued to dodge Lycagon's attacks. Akane told Rei to look out, and she used Hagakushi's secret arts, Utsasimi again, so Lycagon attacked another log. Akane said that was close, and Rei thought that timing Utsasimi was difficult, and Akane had done it twice, so she must be a phenom. On the other side, Sunraku thought that Akane had invaded Rabatuza, so he asked if that wasn't enough, and why she was interfering with Lycagon. Nevertheless, he praised her good defense, even if that was all Akane could do. Sikru said that Akane was recognized by Seagworm, the Golden Dragon King, despite her appearance. Sunraku replied that he was happy for the help, but asked why Akane wanted to see him. He added that if Akane could help, that would be good, but only Akane knew about the unique scenario he had a monopoly on, so he wondered if she had other motives. At that moment, he stopped himself because he was thinking unnecessary things again, and he had no time for that. Then, he called out to Akane and asked her to continue backing up Rei, apologizing for the sudden request, because Akane was the only one he could rely on at that time. Akane smiled because of this and happily said she would do it. For Rei, there was no doubt that Akane was a trustworthy partner, but she couldn't help feeling uneasy about it. On the other hand, Lycagon was seething with rage, ready to maul them all. Lycagon charged again towards Akane and Rei, but they managed to evade her. Akane commented that she now understood the situation and pointed out that Lycagon was indeed targeting Rei, while Rei said she needed to find an outlet to attack. Sikru, meanwhile, said he never conceived that they would face the Night Emperor, to which a mole added that they really never know what will happen to them when they're with Sunraku, to which Sunraku replied that he was just as surprised as they were. But now he said their problem was how much Lycagon was targeting Rei, and maybe she thought Rei was the most dangerous opponent, or perhaps she had figured out their plan. When Sunraku's crystal bullet finished charging, he charged again while explaining that either way, they needed to get Lycagon away from Rei because if they don't do that, they can't win. He ordered Sikru to help Akane and Rei, to which he agreed, and after that he told Emul to start it, making Emul ask what he wanted her to do. He explained that they would try to stop Lycagon using a magic chain, so Emul immediately cast it towards her, causing a magical chain to rush towards the monster's hind right leg, and it managed to coil around it. So Sunraku praised Emul, but with just one swing of Lycagon's hind leg, she managed to break Emul's magic chain, which worried her because she broke it so easily, but Sunraku said he only needed a moment of distraction. Using the spare time Emul gave him, he quickly cast his skill Unbroken Light Dance and sent numerous light speed thrusts to Lycagon's back, but she didn't pay attention to him and still charged towards Akane and Rei, which surprised him and made him ask if that much wasn't even worth paying attention to, while Akane was commenting that his skill was still cool and it was like a skill in Berserk Online Passion called Quick Draw Fist. Sunraku was irritated by this and questioned why she was comparing his skill to a bugged-out skill in that piece of crap game, but as he was saying this, he realized that Akane knew that game. So he asked if she was also a BRP player, to which she agreed and explained that she played under the name Dragonfly and had fought Sunraku once. Sunraku was surprised by this, but quickly remembered that she was the player who found a new bug, and after that, Sunraku asked if she came here and did all this because she thought he was the same Sunraku she had played with, to which Akane happily agreed and said that she asked help from Emul and Sikru to travel 3 areas to reach 3rd Rima. Sunraku then thought how dangerous this person was compared to Katsuo or Pensilgan. Rei commented that was the reason why Akane was so familiar with Sunraku, and while preparing to attack again, she also thought that if that was the case, it meant she still had a decent chance with Sunraku, and she sent her catastrophe attack towards Lycagon again. Lycagon countered, so she was forced to block and retreat, but fortunately, she only needed 1 more Apocalypse and 2 more catastrophes to be able to use her special move. However, while she was thinking this, a new clone of Lycagon suddenly appeared behind her, but luckily Akane managed to get close to her and used Hagakushi's secret arts Utsasimi on her again, replacing her position with a log, which was hit by Lycagon's surprise attack. She apologized, saying she had lowered her guard, while Akane was commenting that was the monster's clone attack and if she really focused on you, it would be difficult to dodge, and while speaking, she suddenly received a notification, so she opened her tab. Sunraku, meanwhile, couldn't believe that there was a person from another game who came there and helped him. Akane was really a go-getter, he thought, and he was saying this in a different way compared to the other idiots he knew, and she was the type who set goals to improve her performance in that way. After that, he charged again and told Akane that her decoy skill was a big help, and even though he had the Mirror of Fading skill, it was still difficult to catch Lycagon if her focus wasn't on him. So Akane shouted that her Utsasimi skill uses a consumable item to activate, and she had already used up the last one, causing Sunraku to shout in worry, while Sikru added that they were really unprepared for this tussle. Lycagon bit a post on her side, and after breaking that part, she threw it towards Akane, which surprised her and Rei. In response, Sikru charged and using his summon katana, he quickly sliced the post into small pieces so it didn't hit Akane. Akane thanked him, to which he pointed out that was a close call. Akane continued her explanation to Sunraku and apologized because she was only level 43, so she thought she couldn't help much with offense, and Sunraku replied that he understood and she didn't need to push herself. Because Akane had no more decoys, Sunraku thought that getting Lycagon's attention was their only option left, and Emul asked what they were going to do now. Sunraku looked at his newly reloaded weapon and explained that before he used it, he wanted to check something first, which puzzled Emul. He explained that Lycagon was more than just strong because she also had an intelligent AI, but there was one thing that didn't add up here. He said that this game represents damage to living creatures using polygonal blood effects, but so far in this fight, he hadn't seen Lycagon produce any such effects. At first, he thought she was just too tough to be damaged, but he was sure Rei's attacks were hitting solidly, yet they weren't doing anything, so he had an idea about what this might mean. He quickly called a mole and asked if didn't she have a magic spell called Mana Shaker, and told her to throw it at Lycagon, which confused a mole and she tried to reason. But Sunraku quickly cut her off and said not to worry because he had a hunch it would work on Lycagon. He pushed her, saying there was no time to waste, so she immediately obeyed and used Mana Shaker on Lycagon, and a fireball-like attack began to fly towards her. Lycagon was surprised but managed to lower her body, so a mole's attack just grazed her and bounced off to a slab nearby, causing a mole to be disappointed that she only nicked Lycagon, but Sunraku said no, it was a bullseye. He said it wasn't that big, but she really did damage Lycagon. Sunraku explained that Mana Shaker has no destructive effect against physical targets, but it has a big effect on non-physical enemies like ghosts or creatures whose bodies run on magic, and that's what they had here, and he teasingly asked Lycagon if he's right. He added that this also made sense because Lycagon could move within shadows and not just her clones, so her build was the same as her clones that came from darkness. He stared closely at the small part hit by a mole and said it looked like she still couldn't be scratched by that much damage, and pointed out that she was secretly healing the damage Ray had done to her so he wouldn't notice. Because of what happened, Lycagon shifted her focus to Sunraku and a mole and quickly sent a claw attack, but Sunraku managed to dodge it while a mole screamed in fear. Sunraku praised a mole because now Lycagon had decided she was a dangerous bunny, causing a mole to scream even more in fear that she wanted to go home. On the other side, Ray and the others also noticed that Lycagon's focus had shifted, and because of that, she immediately decided to send an attack. So Akane gave her a Roger while Sikru said he would provide support. We returned to Sunraku and Imole, and Imole was still screaming while Lycagon chased them, while Sunraku was commenting that the outcome of what they did earlier was good, but using Imole to get her attention was extremely risky because he knew that if an NPC died, they wouldn't respawn back like they did. If he fled to Inventoria because he couldn't avoid an attack, it would save him, but that might not be the case for Imole, and if she was defeated here, he would never live it down. He suddenly said that now that these NPCs were here, he had made a decision, which caught Imole's attention. He told her not to worry because gamers hone their performance when they face more hassles, so he would show Lycagon that Ray wasn't the only one with a big hidden trump card. After he said that, we returned to a point in time where Ray was explaining about the clincher she was trying to use on Sunraku, and it had one more condition. To invoke it, she said it required a long spellcasting time, which surprised Sunraku, and she added that she needed to hit Lycagon immediately after completing the cast because if she didn't, it wouldn't work, to which Sunraku commented that it meant they had obstacles even after the cast. So Ray pointed out that the skill was annoying to use, but she guaranteed it packed force. Sunraku understood that and explained that he wouldn't go in wholly without a plan, and if his best effort didn't work, he would just smile at it and conquer that area again. After that, we return to the present where Lycagon continues chasing a mole while she's riding on Sunraku's back, causing Sunraku to laugh and say that now Lycagon was crazy for her, making Imole scream in fear and say this wasn't some laughing matter. Sunraku replied that she was right. It wasn't like that, and there was nothing in their situation they could just laugh off any longer. While he was explaining to Imole not to worry because he would finish this as fast as possible, his tab suddenly notified him that Suzaku only had 5% energy remaining, which troubled Sunraku and shocked him because all it was doing was clearing the clouds in the air, and now it wouldn't last even a minute longer. Because of this, he ordered Suzaku to cut its boosters and dive down, and stand by with as little power as possible. It obeyed him and began to descend, and as it was going down, Sunraku commented while running from Lycagon that Suzaku still had a big job to do, and if it ran out of gas, he would really be in trouble, causing Imole to wonder who he was talking to. Sunraku added that now time was their enemy, and he had given his trust to Ray. He lured Lycagon towards Ray, and as they got close, she immediately sent a catastrophe attack to the monster's side. Ray retreated after that and commented that she only needed to do one more attack, and prepared to face the charging Lycagon. Lycagon was enraged at her and prepared to charge, causing Sikru to shout for her to retreat because the monster was still targeting her. Sunraku quickly ran towards Ray and told Imole to prepare her Mana Shaker, to which Imole said she couldn't fire it again because she had just used it. If that's the case, he said, she should just prepare her magic chain spell. And Sunraku used his Krista bullet on Lycagon, which hit the ground where Lycagon was standing. The mole followed up with a magic chain on Lycagon's raised paw, and when Lycagon turned to her left, she saw Ray ready to deliver an attack. Before her attack landed, Ray commented that she was wide open, and soon after, her apocalypse attack fell on Lycagon. However, Lycagon jumped away from them and seemed to have dodged Ray's attack, which worried Akane and made her ask if Lycagon had dodged her, to which Ray answered no, and it turned out that it grazed the monster's foot, so she pointed out that it counted as a hit. Now that she had completed one condition to use her next skill, she prepared to use her next attack. Sunraku praised her for hitting it in such a small open space and instructed her to start casting and said he'll take care of the rest, to which she agreed, stepped back a bit and started doing it. She stabbed her sword into the ground and began to cast her special move. While Ray was preparing, Akane got amazed of the battle therein and asked Seacrew what they should do here, to which Seacrew replied that this wasn't the time for them to act. Sunraku, meanwhile, was thinking that Ray was defenseless during casting, so now as the main course, he needed to protect her no matter what happened. But as he was saying this, black clouds began to cover the sky, and the moon was disappearing, which worried him. He complained that only a few minutes had passed since he put Suzaku on standby, and this was the worst possible timing, so he commented that the goddess of random numbers was cackling at them. He quickly moved and warned Akane that Lycagon could attack using invisible clones in the dark, so she needed to listen for a characteristic audio to avoid it, but he also thought here that it wouldn't be enough. If they moved away from Lycagon, her rage would go to Ray, and if she was taken down, they would have no other way to win. He thought that unless they could neutralize Lycagon's invisible clones with just Seacrew and Akane, they would be defeated there. Akane was very surprised when she heard Sunraku's explanation, but her confusion couldn't stop Lycagon from charging at them. Ray continued casting her attack, and while saying the words needed for her casting, she asked Sunraku in her mind if she should just cast like this or cancel it and help them dodge Lycagon. Suddenly, Akane shouted for her to continue casting, which startled her, and said to let them handle the invisible clones. Sunraku turned to Akane, and she gave him a reassuring smile, so he left it to her to stop Lycagon's invisible clones. While protecting Ray, Akane and Seacrew prepared and began to listen carefully to their surroundings, and here she heard a sound like something scraping the ground, and she thought that if it was hiding in the dark, they should illuminate the area. Because of this, she used her Kagakushi Hidden Secret Arts Ryuibuki on the surroundings and started making hand signs like in the anime Naruto. And after doing that, a symbol appeared and she took a deep breath. She then opened her mouth and suddenly her eyes transformed to resemble those of a dragon. And a huge fireball appeared from her mouth, revealing Lycagon's invisible clone. This monster was puzzled by what happened, and Akane began to explain that the skill she used here was one of the hidden arts you only get at random as part of the training quest to acquire the ninja job. She added that Ryuibuki, or Dragon Breath, is a secret ninja art that imitates the breath of a dragon vivid in her memory. Seacrew also explained that after playing for less than 1 month, Akane Akitsu encountered a dragon, and compared to the Sky Ruler, it was a paper tiger, as if night and day, but it was still enough as a light source, and he prepared to attack. He stabbed his katana into the ground and shouted, "Behold Night Emperor," and told her to taste his bamboo lightning, and after he did that, numerous bamboo sprouted from the ground and solidly hit Lycagon's clone. There was a clash of strength between the monster's clone and his skill, but soon his special move prevailed and Lycagon's clone vanished into thin air. Akane was amazed by this and cheered that he stopped it and he never fails her, where Seacrew said that if he grasped the direction further, he could solidify it even more. After defeating the clone, he then commented with a surprised manner that the weakness of the Night Emperor must be light. While all this was happening, Ray continued casting her special attack, and in her mind, she was amazed that Seacrew stopped Lycagon's attack using bamboo, and thought that Akane's Ryuibuki was too flashy to be a wyvern's breath. Because of what she saw, this made her even more pumped up that they, along with Sunraku, should land their planned attack too. On Sunraku's side, He was also amazed at what Akane did, and said she did even better than he thought while fiddling with something on his tab, causing a mole to ask what he was doing because Lycagon was already running towards them. He told her to chill and explained that he had just finished prepping what he was preparing, and now it was time to bring out his Guilta-Brill. He then talked to his weapon and said drive into this guy and show her what you can really do. On the other side, we turn to Rei casting her Ignition Maximum Power, and she's saying that according to the rules, she will deal with her opponent using only what she needs to win. She cheered Sunraku in her mind to hold Lycagon while she was channeling. While Lycagon was charging towards Sunraku and Emole was screaming in fear that she was right in front of them. So while Sunraku was looking at something on his interface tab, he calmed her down and explained that he had just finished preparing for his secret weapon. Sunraku positioned himself and plunged his Guilta-Brill into the ground, and he also produced a crystal bullet in front of him. As Lycagon approached the bullet, he quickly enlarged it, and it hit Lycagon's frontal left leg, causing her to lose balance slightly. Because of the split-second opening he created, he ordered Emole to cast Mana Shaker on the monster's frontal left paw, which Emole did, and it hit solidly. When it hit, it caused a strong pulse that almost peeled off its skin, which delighted both of them. After that, Sunraku controlled Suzaku again and said he was counting on it to do its last job. He sent it charging from behind Lycagon, and it target-locked onto her injured leg. It insulated its slasher and charged at full throttle towards the monster. Sunraku shouted for Lycagon to take that attack, and it quickly flew to her leg, causing a large gash. Because of this, Lycagon fell to her side, while amazement was visible on Sikru and Akane's faces as they watched. Suzaku completely ran out of energy, but before he returned it to his inventory, he praised it and told it to rest. Lycagon was irritated by what they did to her, so she angrily stood up and growled while staring at them. Suddenly, Sunraku shouted at Emole to move away from him as well, which puzzled her, so he explained that he was now going to use his secret weapon. He prepared his Guilta-Brill and explained that his right fist, Giga Drill, possesses a skill that uses moonlight to charge magic, and that magic creates a crystal bullet that forms in his left fist, but it also has one more use. This is the explosion of all the magic it has accumulated to turn it into damage. His Giga Drill started emitting a strong aura, and he called this move Exceed Charge. He explained that once he uses this, he needs to wait 168 hours before he can use it again. So in other words, he can only use it once a week, and it's a technique he'll only use as a last resort. While Lycagon was feeling the intense power coming from that weapon of his, he added that nevertheless, its particularity causes the damages to be proportional to the magic it has accumulated, which due to the greatness of its inconvenience, makes it a devastating asset. He charged at Lycagon and shouted that if she dodges the moon, he'll hit her. He said he'll end the fight once and for all, with all the accumulated magic during the battle. He pointed his Giga Drill right at Lycagon's face and used Exceed Charge Reject, which emitted an extremely bright light and sphere-like attack, and Lycagon tried to counter it with her mouth. Their two powerful attacks clashed, causing strong waves of energy around them, and Sunraku shouted that this was for what happened last time, and for the monster to take this, while Lycagon was also growling from the intensity. Sunraku continued to drive in his attack while marveling at himself for the fact that he executed the Exceed Charge Reject using his secret weapon despite its recast time, and he shouted again that the shock was coming. After the simultaneous attack of the two, it caused a powerful explosion that sent them flying, and the damage from Sunraku's secret weapon was visible on Lycagon's mouth, but along with that, his Giga Drill also shattered in the process. His companions shouted in worry for him, but fortunately, he managed to clinch the situation and had 1 health point left. While he was being flung, he explained that in exchange for that enormous power, the user would receive a large backlash. But thanks to his luck stats, he said he managed to avoid a KO. And he also explained that if your character has 50 or more luck stats, any backlash or damage inflicted on you will leave you with 1 health point. Nevertheless, he said he now needed to avoid the shock of hitting the ground or a wall, so this wasn't over yet. He thought about whether he should teleport to the inventory, But he quickly realized that if he did that, he would run out of energy, and when he arrived there, he would have no strength left to use. So he just shouted that he didn't expect the backlash to be that violent. He cursed, saying retreat was out of the question now. Fortunately, he didn't expect a mole to use magic chain on him to pull him towards them, and the three of them jumped together to catch him and prevent him from taking fall damage. Thanks to Akane, Sikru, and a mole, he managed to land on the ground as they absorbed the fall damage, leaving him speechless while the three were happy he was alive and safe. And Sikru even commented that he had finally come to his senses. While standing up, Sunraka thanked them and said they almost missed Rei's turn. As he stood, he shouted to her that they were all ready and in position, so she should show them the ignition maximum power. Rei had reached the final words of her spell casting, and she was saying this while Lycagon was still trying to regenerate from Sunraka's Exceed Charge Reject, and she said, "Therefore with my first, I will destroy all creation. I have the angel Satinel in me, and the demon Satan." She removed her sword from where it was stuck in the ground and raised it, continuing her chant by saying, "Both will bring chaos, the beginning and the end will resound, Armageddon." Her surroundings began to glow, and light and darkness gradually coiled around her sword as it was raised in the air. While gathering the full strength of her attack, Rei explained that this skill had extremely difficult conditions for activation, where the battle could end before you could even use it, so she thought it was useless. But now, she said, she wasn't thinking about that. All of her companions had created this moment precisely to get her into this situation, to strike down the Night Emperor. She swung her sword at the approaching Lycagon, and after saying the final words of her spell, she shouted Armageddon, and it solidly hit the charging monster's face. Upon impact, it released an extremely powerful energy blast with light and dark elements, and it enveloped the surroundings due to the intense impact. Sunraku and the others shielded their eyes because of the light emitted by Rei's extraordinary spell, while it was accompanied by another attack from Lycagon. Sunraku commented that this was Rei's trump card, and this player was truly insane. Rei shouted with all her might while giving her all for this attack, while Lycagon roared back as she fought against Rei's strength. The power output of both attacks intensified, causing destruction to their surroundings, and before long, Rei had released all the power of her ignition maximum power. After that, the smoke gradually subsided while Akane and the others were still in awe of her. She happily said she had done it, but just as Akane was about to say that this was as expected because her attack had hit the monster's face directly, they saw Lycagon still standing in front of Rei. She menacingly stared at Rei, causing Akane's eyes to widen in fear as she stared at it, while Sunraku was irritated because their plan still didn't work there. Rei fell to her knees due to fatigue and exhaustion of her stamina, and she couldn't believe that even after using her trump card on this colossus, it still wasn't enough, and she only managed to slash a large part of its right face. Sunraku and the others immediately ran towards her, and Sunraku asked a mole if she could use Magic Shaker again, to which she replied that she still needed to wait a bit longer. Lycagon saw them approaching her, so she seemed irritated and slowly closed her eyes and started transforming into smoke, which caught Rei's attention. Before Sunraku and the others could get close to this monster, it disappeared right in front of them and became just a clump of black smoke. When Akane saw this, she thought it was using shadow movement, but Sunraku pointed out that no, and he noticed here that Lycagon's body was disintegrating. A mole pointed something out to him and told him to look at it, and he saw Lycagon's eyes imprinted in the air while staring at them with a vague expression. After that, the colossus completely vanished, causing Sikru to wonder what they had seen here, while Akane and a mole commented that for a moment, Lycagon's face seemed to be smiling. Suddenly, a notification appeared that Sunraku and the others had received a title called Piercing the Shadow Wolf, a special status called Guiding Light, and there was also a question asking if they wanted to start the unique scenario X the Dark of Night, Purged by the Light of Courage. Akane was overjoyed when they received rewards, and it seemed they had won after all, but on Sunraku's side, he wasn't happy because it didn't say here that they had defeated Lycagon, and what was that face of Lycagon they saw in the darkness? He stared at the title they received and thought carefully about what it meant, and before long, He commented that this was what it wanted to say, which puzzled the mole and Akane. He explained here that probably even that one, which they thought was the real body, was actually a shadow wolf created by Lycagon. So in simple terms, it might have been a clone too, which surprised Akane. So he added that maybe the real monster was watching from somewhere else, or maybe she was enjoying controlling her clone from afar. Because of that, Akane asked if he meant everything here was fake, to which Sunraku just cursed in frustration and said that monster had the audacity to mess with them. Rei spoke up, saying wasn't it okay because even if it was a clone or a fake, they managed to defeat the Lycagon that no one else could defeat thanks to their cooperation, and she added that she had a great time with that alone. Sunraku seemed to be dazzled by the happiness Rei brought, and it was as if he saw Rei's true appearance. So he scratched his head there and wondered if something just flickered or if it was just his imagination. After that, he said that he thought Rei was right there, and just the chance to see Rei's insane Armageddon using all her strength and energy was worth it, while Akane agreed with him and said it was awesome. Sunraku then said that whether it was a shadow or a clone they fought there, a win is a win. So now he happily said that he had gotten his glorious revenge on that bastard Lycagon. He decided to just accept that they would deal with the real Lycagon some other time, and it looked like they had a reward there, so they should look at it now. While looking at the rewards tab, suddenly the marks on his body began to sizzle and burn, so he stared at them, and Imol wondered why his markings started acting strangely. Sunraku began to wonder and worry about what was happening to his markings, and he noticed that there was a haze coming out of them, which also concerned Akane and the others. He realized something about what caused his markings to burn, and he remembered the description of the curse that this curse could be lifted through a prayer of a saint, or by defeating the creature that applied that curse. He shouted here that Lycagon was the one who put the curse on him even though in shadow, so when they defeated it, it meant his curse was lifted. He cheered in joy because he no longer needed Saint Sis to do that for him, and finally he could now leave behind his half-naked walking. He said so much time had passed, so they should let him stare carefully at his perverted style, and it seemed he had become somewhat attached to this after all this time, causing Imol to wonder if he was aware that he was a pervert. Sunraku prepared here and raised his hand, saying it was time to remove these annoying marks. However, instead of the marks disappearing, Lycagon's face suddenly appeared in front of them, leaving Akane and the others speechless, and she suddenly ate him, surprising his companions. They were worried about this while Lycagon's head was chewing Sunraku, and C-Crew thought if this was the way of dispelling the curse, while Rei asked if they should help Sunraku. After chewing Sunraku, Lycagon took a deep breath and spat out Sunraku with saliva still on his body. Imol quickly approached to see if he was okay, to which Sunraku groggily replied that he felt like a gum that had been chewed all night and then spat out on the street. When he looked at the brighter side that at least his curse markings were gone, as he sat upright, it appeared that they were still on his body, and he was even more concerned because they seemed to have become more noticeable. A notification appeared that the curse on him had become Lycagon's scar, and it was explained here that the one who defeated the alter ego of the Night Empress was no longer recognized as Lycagon's food. These markings, it said, were proof of being worthy to be defeated by her own hands. A mark of recognition from the strongest of species for the strongest of warriors. The markings engraved in the very soul can only be destroyed by defeating the true form of the Black Wolf. Sunraku was annoyed because instead of disappearing, the curse placed on him by Lycagon was strengthened. He read the description of the curse he received, so he just grumbled in irritation because if he couldn't defeat the real Lycagon, he would never be able to escape this curse, while Imol commented that the color of the markings had darkened, and Rei asked if that meant Saint Aristella could no longer remove that curse. He saw the other description of his curse that players with Lycagon's scar will be actively sought by monsters of equal or higher level to fight them, and lower level ones will actively flee from them. Moreover, players with this curse will have all curses overridden, will have additional effects when talking to NPCs, and they cannot undergo conversions. Additionally, items can now be equipped on the body parts with Lycagon's scar, but items equipped on the curse will be destroyed after a set amount of time. Sunraku pointed out that the most conspicuous changed effects were about high-level monsters targeting him and that he could now equip armor on the affected body part of Lycagon's scar. When he read that, he became excited because this was a different story, but it quickly disappeared and was replaced again by annoyance and irritation when he read that what he equips will be destroyed after a certain amount of time. And what was up with this happy-go-lucky undressing function? He was annoyed at Lycagon and asked what this mud had done to his mark, and he ordered her to turn it off right now and he wanted a refund. However, Lycagon just grinned at him and disappeared again into thin air. So he tried to grab her and shouted, "Wait, and don't vanish like that," as if she was done here. After Lycagon completely disappeared, Sunraku just fell to his knees in utter disappointment while commenting that he didn't expect that, while a mole tried to cheer him up. Akane spoke to him and asked if he was okay, and maybe running around at full speed would help him blow off some steam. So Sunraku pointed out that only works for speed runs. Rei also tried to talk to him and said she knew Sunraku was a bit down, so she was thinking if the X-unique scenario that appeared on the screen had a point. Sunraku also looked at it and realized here that this scenario was to settle things against a unique monster directly, and he also pointed out that the same thing happened with Wezame the Tomb Guard, while Akane commented that she really didn't know what this was, but was it okay to accept this X-unique scenario? Sunraku replied why not, and it would be more fun if he did that, and they had also helped him a lot. Sunraku also thought that now that the situation was like this, he could no longer talk about monopolizing scenarios, so he would just let Pencilgon pick up the pieces. When he remembered that, he wondered if there were any other rewards besides the title, and when he looked at his interface, he saw the special status called Guiding Light, and its description read that in the darkness of the Black Night, a small fire will show the way to the Empress of the Night. So when the unique monster Lycagon the Nightslayer is near them within a fixed range, it will point to where she is. Additionally, it was written that Lycagon, who unites darkness, can paradoxically give light, and the light that Lycagon gives is part of her, and this is the light that was discarded. After reading it, Sunraku commented that he understood it was like a radar. He said he had only seen Lycagon now by accident, and not because he was attending to an X-unique scenario, and he even praised her for skillfully hiding behind a smokescreen. After this, while pressing the yes button for the new X-unique scenario, Sunraku added that but next time, he would have his passport and would board with his head held high. As the scenario about Lycagon was being added to his list of accepted scenarios, he said he didn't know where Lycagon was hiding. In the sky, in the ocean, or at the very edge of the world, but he was sure he would bring her out of hiding. He said go ahead and wait as if Lycagon could afford it, and he stood like a cool leader in front of Akane, Amol, Rei, and Sikru while saying this. Amol commented that if it was Sunraku, he could afford it, to which Sunraku agreed and Akane added that they would surely defeat her. Sunraku turned his attention to Rei and explained that not to downplay Akane and the others, but now he needed to thank her not just for conquering the area, but for fighting head-to-head with Lycagon, to which Rei became embarrassed and said Sunraku should forget about it because she would go with him as many times as he wanted. Rei started to get flustered by her own wording, so she tried to change it, which puzzled Sunraku. After that, Sunraku explained that in the heat of battle, he almost forgot that they were here to conquer this place and they needed to defeat the area boss here without delay. So when Akane heard that, she happily said that she and Sikru would accompany him, which made Sunraku comment how reassuring that was. He also asked Rei what kind of creature the boss in this area was, so Rei began to explain that the area boss of the Barren Dark Ruin was a wyvern with camouflaged color scales that flies in the sky at the beginning of the battle and rarely descends to the ground. Sunraku thought about that and said he often had problems with those kinds of monsters, but now he had Rei, Amol, and the others with him, and it seemed they could defeat it using magic. However, Rei added something that contradicted what Sunraku was thinking and said that the area boss here had some nasty traits like being able to take control of their magic attacks and also being able to get close to them and steal their weapons. Sunraku and Amol were concerned about that, and Sunraku commented that since they had successive battles with Lycagon, this wouldn't be an easy win, to which Akane added that it seemed they couldn't lower their guard here. Ray added that the name of the area boss here came from a robber, and after that, they went to the area where the boss was hanging out, and it was introduced to us as the Usurper Dragon. Sunraku and the others faced this dragon, and he commented that nevertheless, he was running out of time for his appointment, so he apologized to the Usurper Dragon and said they needed to finish this quickly. In the next scene, we move to the time of sunrise, and here Sunraku was walking around the place and commented that it was getting bright. Ray commented that it took them forever before they realized it, and Akane, while carrying the sleeping Amul, said that it seemed they really took a long time there. Before long, Amul woke up, and as soon as she woke up, she was shouting asking where they were and what had happened to the Usurper Dragon. Sunraku explained to her that the Usurper Dragon was a formidable foe, and Sikru added that it flew around in the air and often stole their weapons, which puzzled her even more. But Akane said that Amul did well there, so she was very confused and asked what she had done because she couldn't remember it. Akane answered her that what she did there was so dangerous that she would never do it, while Ray apologized because if it wasn't for her weakening, they wouldn't have put Amul in that kind of danger, which surprised Amul even more. Amul was trembling with fear here while Sunraku said that it couldn't be helped and was that the after effect of Armageddon, and he understood that having her stats for a day was harsh, and Akane added that still, Ray was stronger than her. Amul shouted asking why what she did was dangerous and what had happened. So Sunraku said that they said it was dangerous but they had recovery in mind, and only a few unexpected things happened. He said Amul was almost eaten several times there or fell from the sky, so it might be better for her to forget about it, causing Amul to ask if that was really true. Sunraku added that speaking of recoil, since his Gilta-Brill was unusable, they might have struggled more there if they hadn't thought of the Super Amul cannon, which worried Amul again, and she asked what that was, and she had no memory of anything, so was he sure she was involved in that? Sikru said her Vorpal soul was amazing and he was proud to be her brother, so she was irritated and shouted asking for someone to tell her what had happened. So Sunraku started to explain that it wasn't much of a battle compared to their fight with Lycagon, and it wasn't a big deal if Amul had forgotten about it, causing Amul to shout that that wasn't the point. While Amul continued to wonder about what had happened to them earlier, Sikru pointed out that in the meantime, what they were looking for was visible. Sunraku turned to look at what Sikru was referring to, and Ray explained that before the update, this was the last town that players could reach. Now, she said, it was a port town where many players gathered to go to the new continent, and this city was called the City of the Second Departure, Fifticia, and we were shown here a beautiful town full of ships. They had finally reached Sunraku's destination, and as they entered the city, Sunraku marveled at the beautiful buildings of the last town of the continent where they were, to which Akane agreed. He turned to look at her and noticed she had put on her mask, so he asked if that was to hide the marking from Seagworm, and Akane agreed and said she only did that in crowded places just in case, but in her mind, she explained that it was only partly true and in fact, she couldn't tell Sunraku that she had accidentally created her avatar using her real face. Ray asked Sunraku if he didn't wear a white cloak when going to a town, so Sunraku said it was difficult to move in that equipment, and he also asked Akane how she could equip a mask even though she had a marking on her face. So Akane explained that it was because it wasn't headgear, but an accessory, while Amul called him to show him the store she was looking at that had many magic books and they might find a bargain there. Sunraku pointed out that he had already bought her many carrots and mana potions, and they still had a lot to do there, causing Amul to sulk. Sunraku pointed out that it was already past 5 a.m., and he was supposed to meet Mordo at 9 a.m., and he still had a lot to do, but he thought he would still make it because in his mind, he was saying he couldn't afford to miss their information about Tarnet. He explained here that he needed to landmark Fifticia by then so he could go back and forth from Lagania, and he would have Virak repair his Gilta-Brill. He was sure it would be a long day when he joined Mordo, so he would take a power nap first, and after that, he would go to the meeting point carrying all the necessary preparations, and he should also verify the changed marking. Sunraku thought about this because he was really pressed for time, while Akane marveled at Amul's human transformation, and she asked Sikru if he could do that too, and it turned out that Sikru was disguised as a backpack on her back. Sikru didn't answer her, so she called him again, and Sikru explained that boxes don't answer, so Akane and Sunraku understood why he wasn't responding. Sunraku thought wearily if there was any Vorpal bunny good at camouflage. While walking around, they saw an alley, and Sunraku thought it looked secluded enough so it would do, and they started to enter the alley. And while he was explaining that a door to Lagania would be conspicuous unless it was in a back alley, suddenly someone spoke using an archaic style of English, saying, "O thou who art strong, let thee awaken thine arcanum." So Sunraku turned and saw an old man in a cloak sitting on one side, which surprised him, while Rei seemed to recognize this old man. Sunraku asked if this was a fortune teller NPC, and said that he is giving such a vibe, but wondered why it's not doing any business, to which the cloaked old man just repeated what he said earlier. So Sunraku replied that he heard that and asked what era this NPC might be from. Rei called him and explained that that man was Arcanum, the Monk of Awakening, which puzzled Sunraku, and Rei asked him if he's level 99 now, to which he agreed. Rei explained that Arcanum was an NPC that appears when a player reaches level 99, and this was the key to unlocking their Arcanum subjob, causing Sunraku and Akane to ask what that was. So she added that jobs in the SLF game affect how easily you learn magic and skills. She said they help sorcerers learn spells, and Twin Blade users master new swords and fighting moves more quickly, to which Akane replied that she somewhat understood this. However, Rei said, the Arcanum is somewhat a unique job, where it doesn't affect how you earn your skills, but rather directly works on their status. Sunraku wondered about this and excitedly asked if he would receive a buff with it. So Rei said not just that, but it would also give you some clear disadvantages. She said the Arcanum comes in many different types, and one example of this is her Arcanum called World, which gives her a boost to all her stats, but it also doubles any penalties applied to her skills, magic, and so on. Sunraku was encouraged when he heard it increased all of Rei's stats, and downside or not, wasn't that good, to which Rei agreed because it suited her build. Sunraku then asked if you could choose which Arcanum you receive, to which Rei shook her head and said it was something for him to test and see. She added that it's believed the game bases its choice on some set of character parameters. Because of that, Sunraku thought that if it's decided based on his personal play style, what kind of Arcanum would he receive? Before long, Sunraku decided to talk to this NPC and commented that they wouldn't know until they tried it. So he would do it now, and he was ready to take Arcanum's Arcanum challenge or something. As he sat in front of the NPC, it began to speak the words, "Acquirer of Strength, awaken and discover the Arcanum within." And suddenly they were enveloped by cloth, which surprised Akane and Amal. Rei said it was okay, and this was part of the event. While inside the sphere of cloth created by Arcanum, he asked Sunraku to choose a card that would define his Arcanum of Fate. While observing the cards, Sunraku noticed these were tarot cards, and he said that with things like this, what he picks is usually predefined by the event flags he has set so far. Before long, he chose a card, and upon picking it, the Arcanum he got was the tarot card of the Fool. After that, we moved to another scene inside an inn in Fictitia, and there were two players here who had just logged in, and the male player commented while still sleepy if they really needed to be this early because it was only 6 o'clock in the morning now. The female player with him said it was her first time logging in again after half a year, so they needed to get back into the groove first, to which the man agreed and pointed out that it had been all in the film since then. He teasingly asked the woman if he was right that she was so excited she couldn't sleep, so she got annoyed and hit him on the head while telling him to shut up. It turns out these were Mordo and Rust when the female player called the male player Mordo and told him to stop saying nonsense and get moving, to which Mordo agreed and called her Rust. We returned to Sunraku when he chose the tarot card the Fool, and when he picked it, Arcanum commented that he wouldn't stay in one place, but also asked if his gadabouting was merely wandering around, or if it had a purpose. After Arcanum said that, he removed the cloth that was wrapped around them, and suddenly Sunraku's tarot card glowed, as well as the deck of tarot cards that Arcanum was holding. The Fool tarot card began to enter Sunraku's body, which surprised him and Akane. He was dumbfounded as the card gradually entered him, and when it fully entered his body, a tab suddenly appeared showing information about the Arcanum the Fool, and its effect on Sunraku was to have his skill recast time. But in exchange, the damage and effect time from debuffs were doubled, and healing items might not work 100% of the time. His sub-job Arcanum Fool was added to his job description, and when Sunraku read the effect of his Arcanum, His eyes sparkled with joy as he shouted that he hit the jackpot here. Arcanum explained to him that the Fool Arcanum would help him in his comeback, but while he was just thanking him, the NPC added that he could no longer ask for help from others, and before he completely disappeared from their sight, he added that thus, any illness would become a sharper blade pointed at his neck. Sunraku thought that this meant he shouldn't get carried away, since heal items have a chance of not working moving forward, and the effects of debuffs were doubled, so not everything he got was good. However, he could still chill out inside the inventory to heal, and he has the Lycagon mark too. Besides, he happily said that if you sum it up, if attacks don't hit him then it's not a problem. So basically that Fool Tarot card was the best possible pick for him, which made Amul comment that he seemed to be getting carried away here, while Ray said it looked like he really picked the Fool card there, which puzzled Sunraku. So she explained that the Arcanum you draw depends on your activity as a player, and she added that many of the exact conditions are still a mystery, as it's the subject of heavy research at the moment, to which Sunraku agreed and said he's sure that the Library clan is super into that kind of stuff. But the Fool card, Ray said, was one of the few Arcanum they knew what triggered it, and it's believed that the faster you reach level 99, the easier it is to get. So Sunraku commented that he seemed to be on the quicker side, and he really was rushing there, so that's that, while Ray was thinking that there were many more factors besides being quick and getting that tarot. And she started to explain in her mind that Hizutomi had been playing Shangri-La Frontier for a month, and reaching level 99 wasn't the only thing he had done. He was at the point where he was defeating monsters rated level 100 or higher, and while Sunraku was asking if she knew what the word next to his level meant, she added that he had also obtained the Extend descriptor. Ray explained that you needed that Extend descriptor in order to boost your level cap, and she had tried to obtain it, but it took 4 level 99 members of Schwartz Wolf working together to meet all the conditions, so that's how difficult it normally was to do that. However, she should have known, and while she was saying this, Sunraku was irritated at Amul because she said that Fool was very fitting to describe him. Ray said that all the difficult games she had given up on before, Hizutomi had finished them all and made them look easy, and if someone like that started playing SLF, it was no wonder that he could quickly defeat Wezaemon, and in addition to that, even though the Shadow Wolf wasn't the real monster, Lycagon the Nightslayer was a monster that Schwartz Wolf had been chasing for a year, and in just one night, Sunraku defeated it without any advanced prep. After thinking about all that, she commented that at this point it was more expected than surprising, but still, she thought excitedly, not only did they finish an entire area together with Sunraku, but she was also there for the big moment, so it was such a deep and action-packed night. However, this was quickly replaced by anxiety when she thought about whether she should tell her sister everything about this, because she thought if she told her the truth, she would start to get excited and immediately take action to catch and talk to Sunraku about information on Lycagon. Because of this, she started to become gloomy and depressed in a corner while thinking that she would put so much burden on Hizutomi if she did that, so maybe it would be better to hide it for a week, which made Akane and Sikru wonder about the mood swings she was showing here. After that, we returned to Sunraku and he said that good things happened to them here, but it was time to visit Rabatuza. So Amul immediately volunteered to open the door to there. After she does that, Sunraku said he would meet Rust and Mordo, and finally they could start the unique scenario he wanted. Before saying goodbye, he told Ray that he couldn't thank her enough for what she had done that day, to which Ray just brushed it off and said it was fun for her too, and if there was anything else she could help with, Sunraku should just let her know, to which Sunraku said he would let her know if he needed her. But in Ray's mind, if only she could go to Rabatuza, they would have more time together, but for her, this was already a big leap forward in their relationship, and she couldn't allow herself to be too greedy. Sunraku also asked Akane what she would do now, so she explained that she would shop in Fiftitia first, and she would return to Rabatuza after that, to which Sunraku said that in that case, they would part ways here. Sunraku also said goodbye to Sikuru, but because he was still pretending to be a box, he just said he was a box and couldn't speak. Ray noticed Akane mentioning Rabatuza and she realized that unlike her, Akane can travel to that place. Before entering Rabatuza, they said goodbye to each other, and while this was happening, Ray thought this was bad because at this rate, she would be left behind, and here Akane also said goodbye to her. But when she was about to leave, she suddenly called her and shyly said she had something she wanted to ask her. On the other hand, we moved to real life inside the room of Kiwomi aka Oikatsu, and he seemed irritated because he couldn't complete his team for the upcoming game tournament. They all have personal stuff going on, so he was annoyed that it's all happening right now, and he would be short of members at this rate. While he was worrying, he suddenly received an email saying the Cinder was looking forward to another battle against him, and that her meteors would overcome his lava again in the next GGC. He was troubled by this and shouted that he would need to forfeit at this rate. He said he should find 2 more players no matter what he had to do, but he also couldn't just get anyone, and he needed major talent where they could hold their own against truly strong players. After intense thinking, he let it go and said he had no choice now but to call his 2 other friends for help, and it turns out Sunraku and Pencil Knight were the ones he chose to contact. He said he needed to bring these 2 to his matches in the global game competition because if not, he would never be able to defeat a certain woman. After that, we suddenly moved to an underwater place with numerous sunken ships scattered around. And there was also a large octopus-like monster here waving its tentacles, and it was said that a new chapter was coming called The Sky Above, the Spread Out Sea, beyond the Abyssal City.